What's up guys, welcome back for another YgoPro duel video. Next match, Cross-Banlist Cup, last match here of the group stage of Group H. Again, last match we have windups versus gladiator beasts. But again, as a couple of people mentioned before in the previous video, it's already sure that both Blood, so Destiny Heroes, and Paleozoics will move on to the top 16 playoffs, since, you know, the matchup of both Paleozoics against windups and Paleozoics versus gladiator beasts. Paleozoics won both matchups, so it will automatically be placed above either windups or gladiator beasts, depending on which deck will win the matchup of today. So yeah, last match here, and then we can finally start with the group stage. The first list you see here is GB, Gladiator Beasts, good old Gladiator Beasts at their prime, 2008, multiple Gazaras in the extra deck, access to multiple Bestiari, multiple Cold Wave to shut down your own Royal Oppression, potentially side-decked or from your opponent's Teledat deck, for example. A lot of back row, you know, that was GB, super stun, anti-meta, having this triple Solemn Judgment, the Chariot indeed, bottomless Rebel, combos, man, those were the times, right? Back then, triple Prisma, again, super powerful, with Test Tiger as well. The second list we have windups, one of those windup lists, again, this was, well, both windups throughout the history of this game were pretty much degenerate, right? We have the hand loop here, the other possibility was the shock lock, so yeah, pick your poison, right? So yeah, which deck has the advantage? Going first seems to be quite important, like most of the times, right? But again, going first definitely should give GB the advantage if GB is going first, with all the back row compels can interrupt and exceed play. Same for a Chariot, although your opponent can play around a possible Chariot, Solemn Judgment as well. Then again, if you look at windups, a triple Mystical Space Typhoon and Heavy Storm in the main deck, so they do have a couple of options against those back rows, and of course multiple 2-card combinations that can spam a full field of extra deck monsters. Okay, so let's see the first duel. Okay, game number 1. I think windups indeed. Windups get to start, although I think, is he going for the windup? At least he should be going for the windup hand loop. Yep, indeed. Yeah, that's how it goes, right? If you don't have access to hand traps, back in the old school days, the only hand trap that GB might run, maybe it was DD Crow, I guess. I remember the list from Paul Lefton, you know, main decking 1 Crow in the main deck just because of Crush card as well. But again, Crow was also important against the Dark Arm Dragon, the Teledat matchup, so sadly don't have that to potentially banish the windup hunter, so I can't prevent my opponent, you know, from looping me for 3 cards basically. Gladiators are, well, they aren't really the best deck at the top decking, since they of course heavily rely on their monsters going through, at least with their attack, tagging out for either something like Bestiari to pop the back row, maybe here in this case a quest to get back the Chariot. That would be definitely very solid. Again, the Giga Brilliant just pumping up those 2 monsters. I'm not really sure how many attack. I believe Giga has 2-1 and the Rabbit has 2k. That's again both definitely higher than my biggest GB monster. And yeah, as I mentioned before, multiple bottomless Triple, multiple Solemn Judgments, those really aren't the best top decks. So game number 2 I start off. This is an okay start. I mean, he random Typhoons. I think one of the worst traps, or at least the worst back rows he could possibly hit with that Typhoon was Waboku, and of course they always miss. But it's cool. I mean, his hand wasn't that fantastic opening with all of those monsters, although he has, again, has another tour guide play ready. But I don't think I have a Chariot in grave. You know, I will just tag out for a quest. No, indeed. The tag for Bestiari doesn't really matter, since again, I think going for Heraklinos was a superior play, only setting 1 back row and of course keeping the 2 cards in hand to potentially discard for, you know, if your opponent activates like a spell and trap, I believe. Yeah, that should be. You know, to negate that. Going for Zen mains definitely was a good pick. You know, Heraklinos has to attack over it and other GBs need to destroy it and definitely don't have a high attack stat to attack over the Zen mains, but that Compulse, man, Compulse was so good. You know, that this was one of the reasons why I think at least during the Synchro era or right before the Synchro era, I can't remember the exact date where a compulsory evacuation device was limited to 1. Anyway, going second this time, I think I'm forced to use very weak Cold Wave, I guess. I mean, you know, windups do play multiple warnings, I believe, the Mirror Force that you're seeing here. So Cold Wave, I think, was needed to get an attack go through and, you know, Bestiai popping one of those back rows. This, I think, was a misplay on my part. Just should have normal summoned the Equest, since, again, if the opponent had the warning, I would not have been able to warning my Gyzarus, at least to reborn my Gyzarus with monster reborn, since again the summon was negated and again no monsters left in my graveyard. So luckily I don't get punished for that particular play of, you know, setting the GB, dodging a possible bottomless or whatever, right? Then again, no monsters in graveyard, so I just should have normal summoned the GB here in this case. Here again, another mistake, definitely should have Torrential Tribute on the Zen Mighty Summon, yep indeed, so, because now, as you see, he does have, at least I think he went for Rabbit eventually to banish the rat, so rat will be returned to the field next turn, but this, this was a big sack. I guess normal summoning the Equest, he has to warning that. Again, the normal summon, just negate the normal summon if you're playing against GB, but that not so foreseen monster reborn kinda steals the game here. So again, a couple of misplays on my part, but in the long run, luckily, they didn't really matter that much. Again, GB does win this one with 2-1, but again, as I mentioned before, Paleozoics will move on to the top 16. So this is our top 16 bracket of this year's Cross-Banlist Cup. Things will be sped up, right? Multiple uploads each week, so definitely stay tuned. Feel free to leave your predictions of the upcoming matchups. They will pretty much be randomized, right? So yeah, we will see what the next match will be. Okay, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching and feel free to leave a comment or like if you enjoyed the video. Lithium signing out. Peace.